Good morning, Asia.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm.
It's gotta be better.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Regional Wastewater Advisory Committee for today, June 26th, 2025. We'll start with a call to order. Oh, that's what I just did. We'll start with a roll call.
There you go.
Next.
Good morning, everyone. Alan Forrest,
Here.
Alejandra Frejo RK.
Here.
I'm learning. Anne Marie Wolf,
Here.
Asia Philbin,
Here.
Claire Zucker,
Here.
Craig Canizaro,
Here.
Eric Stuhlwald,
Here.
Kirsten Wangsvik,
Here.
Matt Mathewson,
Here.
and Steve Foley.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. Okay, we'll move on to the virtual meeting reminders. Please remember to mute your microphones. This will help ensure there's no feedback or background noises that may interfere with the speaker. If a committee member would like to speak or ask a question, please use the raise your hand feature. And remember to lower your hand once your question has been answered or you have finished speaking. When you're ready to speak, don't forget to unmute your microphone, especially important during the votes. And please mute your microphone when you're finished. And as a reminder, audience members are only permitted to speak during the call to the audience unless called upon by the committee. And this meeting is being recorded to satisfy the open meeting law requirements. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move on with item D, which is call to the, or E, call to the audience. Are there any audience members that would like to speak? Okay, hearing none. We will go to the safety share.
Well, I got some.
Okay,
I'm gonna call it, in general, because there's a number of them that we could piggyback on this, but, you know, we all have our routines and our regular activities in life and in our day. But it's when we do those kind of not so normal or unusual activities that we're more apt to have something happen. And I'll share with you a serious near miss property damage we had here at work. But just as an example of something less serious, but like my wife had a flat tire and guess who got to change it? Okay, you don't have to guess, but it wasn't her. And so not a big deal. I had everything right, got it all changed. But I had to throw the bad, the broken spare into the back of my pickup so I could get it down and get it fixed. Well, in that motion of throwing it into the truck, I tweaked my back a little because I just didn't probably do the proper lifting because it's not like I do it every day and I think about it. But I'll be okay. Don't worry, I'll be okay. But my wife said, I should have helped you with it. And she's had her second knee replaced recently. And I said, no, you have two good knees. You should have been the one throwing it in the truck. But
And you're still a lot.
so that was the more serious accident. And I won't steal Claire's thunder, but something unusual happened to her this morning doing unusual. And I think you took a fall out of
I
it.
took a fall this morning, so I think it goes with yours very well. It's sort of like not paying attention, right? And so like,
And you're just not used to doing it and going through your normal routine of what's
No.
safe or what's normal.
I backed into my garbage can, which I guess my husband had left, no. I don't know who, I'm not blaming, I don't know who left it behind my car, but anyway, I hit my garbage can and oh no, I gotta get to the meeting. I ran out and I totally tossed down the driveway and and my watch told me that I had fallen. It was saying SOS, should I call emergency? And I'm like, how do I turn this off?
You know,
So,
there's that saying that if a tree falls in the forest and no one saw it, did it really happen? Well, did anyone see you fall?
no,
Okay.
no, I live in a cul-de-sac and nobody saw me fall. Nobody rushed to my rescue, but my phone, my watch was there. So
Well,
anyway, pay attention.
And so that's just those two, you know, a little humor in there, but the more serious one that happened to us at our Tres Rios facilities, last week. We have, you know, we currently have our biogas cleaning facility down as we're changing out the membranes. You know, we've never been able to hit the contracted or designed capacity through that system. It's run great, we're making money, but we're not making as much as we could, and we attribute it to the, you know, some issues with the construction and design of the system. So to prove it once and for all, you know, we're going, you know, the membranes have been impacted from some things that happened earlier on, so we're changing them out, and we have a contract going on to change those. But while that's down, you know, and all the right safety protocols are followed, but because, you know, the methane gas that we process and clean is very flammable, and we purge the system with nitrogen to make it a safe environment. Well, being the overachievers that many of our team are, you know, besides that gas cleaning plant, we, you know, where the gas comes from in the digesters, you know, part of our bigger complex, we're like, hey, the system's down, let's do some more additional work and get these things that we can't normally get. And so that's where the problem became. So over at the digesters and the gas handling system after the digesters, there's various piping and appurtenances, and one of them is a valve, a cast aluminum pot that has a valve in it, and for a safety situation, it can close if it needs to. Well, the team was purging nitrogen into the system over there. This is still under investigation, so I'm not gonna go into super detail because I can't say I know for sure all the nuances, but we'll find out. But nonetheless, as they were purging that system with nitrogen, we believe that this, you know, the SCADA system, you know, like sewage flow comes to Tres Rios, and if you had a power bump at the front of the plant, there's valves that close, they fail, when you lose power, they fail closed to divert the flow away from the plant and over to the emergency overflow basin, which is normal. So there's throughout your system, you have different things such as valves. Some of them may fail open, some may fail closed. And in this particular job, I think that the way they were pressurizing the line, that it caused a valve to close, which allowed the pressure to even build up more. And the normal operating pressure of the gas system at the digesters, I think, is around 15 PSI, somewhere in that range, low pressure, relatively low pressure. Well, it went much higher than that when the valve closed, if in fact that is the root cause, which we'll find out, or I'll get an update for sure. Well, that cast aluminum pot, you know, valve assembly overpressurized, and just like if you keep blowing a balloon long enough, guess what? Pops. So it popped, it exploded basically, and very fortunately, nobody was in that building at the time that happened, or, you know, in that vicinity when it happened. And I mean, it could have been, you know, a deadly incident, really, if somebody was too close to that pot. So we're taking it serious. We're gonna find out the root cause and have a lot of learning from it. And as a result, you know, it just reminds us that when you're doing the unusual, we don't normally shut down the system and purge it and do all these things. But we have to remind ourselves there's all other things you have to check. Like, how is the system set up on SCADA to, you know, so that we're making sure we're going through the whole system and planning it out right. But again, I could be off a little bit in the exact details, but that's just something to share. And I'll cast a picture around it. Shows that pot. It's an 8-inch valve that's in there, so it's fairly big. But the other part of it too is inside that system, there's a lot of soot and stuff. And so that whole room, a fairly big room, became charcoal splattered, charcoal and dust, like, you know, soot dust all over. So we've been cleaning that up. And again, luckily nobody was in there, and then it's, you know, saved our bacon, but we better learn something out of this, and that's our next current effort, so those are my safety shares. I'm sorry I had to drag you into that, Claire.
Oh, no, that's all right. After I fell, my first thought was, I have a safety share. All right, moving on. Good job.
Same picture.
All right, we'll go through the approval of the minutes. Everybody have a chance to read the minutes? And does anybody have any comments on them? May I have a motion to approve, please? So moved. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye
Aye.
or raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Minutes are approved. All right, and we'll go on to the discussion, and we'll start with the director's update.
All right, I'll try to be brief for a change. The Board of Supervisors did approve our user fee rate increase along with the other items, so they approved the 3% rate increase, which included the volume fee and the fixed fee portion of the formula for a net 3% increase in user fee formula. Followed by the 3 additional years at 1.75. They also approved the connection fee, or we call the wastewater utility fee, a 3% increase for, now, and for 3 also additional years at 3%. They approved the sunsetting of the discounts that we were concerned about, without fanfare. So really all those items passed. And was there a 4th one?
No.
That was it, those 3. I don't know if Art's on here or not, but
Yeah.
Art, when we had our finance meeting this month, he joked about it. Our topic, and Jeanette told me that it took a whole 3 minutes to go through our item and it passed unanimously, all, 5 to 0. We thought rates are always a more sensitive subject, but the joke was that because Project Blue was on the agenda as well, and it had like 2 hours worth of discussion, I think everybody was wore out, and so ours went through very quickly, and so fortunately, we got all those items passed, and we're moving on. And just an FYI, but yesterday we held, I'm sorry, not yesterday, day before yesterday, we held, was it yesterday?
Yesterday was the finance.
No, I'm talking about the SOS.
Oh, that was Tuesday.
Tuesday was the sewer outreach subsidy public meeting. Initially we didn't realize we needed to do a public meeting, but we did that one Tuesday. And there were no participants in person here, and there were no participants online, as it was a hybrid meeting. But that item will ultimately, we met our criteria of holding a public meeting and doing outreach. But we will be presenting it to the board for consideration, I believe, on the September 2nd Board of Supervisors meeting. So that's kind of the last leg of some things that were tied together, but just due to our oversight on the public meeting, that one was not included with the recent Board of Supervisor approval of the rate increases. So we'll get that to them on September 2nd. And the only other, just briefly, I guess it's a little bit of a improvement. We've been real close to the 10% vacancy rate, 40 vacancies out of the 400 positions. Right now, I believe we're at 33, so we've made we're closer to 8% now. So we made a little headway, and hopefully we'll continue and get what we need to do. But I think they'll stop there
Okay,
unless there's any questions.
everything went through very quickly at that board meeting, so,
Yeah.
Except Project. Blue.
Except for that was really long.
yeah. All right, so thank you very much, Jackson. We'll move on to election of officers for FY 25-26. And Jeanette, are you?
Yeah. All right. So this is the results from everybody's votes, and it will start applying in the August RAC meeting for the next fiscal year. So we have a total of currently 12 members. I received responses from 11 members. Claire has been reelected as chair for the full committee. Scott Oldendorf has been reelected vice chair of the full committee. Asia has been reelected chair for the CIP subcommittee, and Kirsten Wainsvik has been elected chair for the financial subcommittee. And so this will start in August.
And that's because we do not have a meeting in July.
Correct.
Well,
In next month, we have a CIP meeting, but Asia's already
Yeah.
there, so.
well, I'd like to thank Matt for his service as the chair of the finance committee. Thank you so much. I think you've done it for several years and much appreciated and welcome Kirsten to that role. And I'm sure it will be a good year. Thank you, Matt. All right, so we're going to move on to the Compliance and Regulatory Affairs Office update.
All right, let me just bring that up. There you go, my friend.
You sure?
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Max DeSante. I will be reporting on CRAO. There was also a request to include an update on advanced water purification. So, I'll try to do my best to squeeze into time, but there's a lot to talk about really specific to AWP as well. So I'll breeze through all the CRAO stuff and get right to why you're all here, which is AWP. Moving forward. Oh, there we go. Okay, just a reminder of kind of where CRAO fits. We have our glorious director, Jackson Jenkins. Reporting to him as 3 deputy directors, Jeff Pravat, Steve Ritchie, and Jaime Rivera. Jaime is over technical services and engineering, and CRAO is under technical services and engineering. And an introduction to some of our lead staff here. We have Kimberly Baeza over our permitting and water quality unit. And you've seen more of her recently, given updates about Roger Road. Water quality also manages the permits that are assigned to us by ADEQ. So the permits we have. We have our data management unit. They're really responsible for all the data that flows in and out of the water campus. A lot of data from the lab, data going to ADEQ. We report over 50,000 parameters a year for all of our permits. Steve King is over our industrial pretreatment program. So the permits we issue to industry and to other entities. Janelle Kraft is over our compliance laboratory. We have 31 people in the laboratory covering microbiology, organic, inorganic, metals. Really great work done by them. And then finally, the glue that holds us all together, Angela Valenzuela oversees our admin team. They really make everything happen, from ordering supplies to keeping the lights on in the building. And I'm lucky enough that this slide I got to copy from last year. So really fortunate that this whole team continues to put up with me. And some updates from last year. I'll try to go through this quickly. So we did an RV dump site program. We put together a guidance document. We inspected 31 public dump sites that people could drive up to and dump RV waste. Of course, there were people dumping non-RV waste, food trucks and other things. So we went to all the sites, we posted signs, we sent all the site owners guidance last year. And just an interesting development. Following that, we got some calls from Consumer Food Health Safety and a little bit of a panic because food trucks are not being allowed to dump there anymore. And they had approved the lowest class of food trucks that are non-grease wastes, like shaved ice, to dump at some of these locations. But we didn't want that anymore. We don't want somebody with a greasy waste seeing a food truck dumping there and thinking, oh, hey, I can do that too. And so they caused a little bit of a commotion. And we're holding our ground saying that we don't, it's RV waste only, it's domestic waste only. So there's still some work being done on that. Of course, most of the food trucks still go to a commissary to prepare food and do that. The grease campaign was thought, so it's now being run by Combs, and they wanted to do a fully automated year-round drop-off system where they had drop-off locations all around town. That's just, and turns out that's harder than it looks, because you have to have manned stations. You have to be someone who has to be responsible for cleaning up messes. And there really wasn't a chance to figure that out by last year. I don't know if they're going to continue to do that this year. But it is no longer being run by our industrial retreatment program. It's run by Combs, and the total for last year was 580 gallons. So a little bit down, but you can see the graph does go up and down. The Roger Roads Brownfield project, I'm not really going to talk about it here. You do get updates from Kimberly, but just that is a project that is worked on by staff here at CRAO. We upgraded the Marana High Plains effluent recharge project from 600 acre feet per year to 1,200 acre feet per year of recharge. And starting in January of 2025, we've started recharging under the new permit. January, February, and March did have pretty low totals. There was a lot of work that was being done, replacing some pumps and maintenance. But I'm happy to report that April and May were both around 100 acre feet for April and 115 acre feet for May. So kind of getting to some of those elevated numbers. Not sure we'll hit 1,200 acre feet this year, but we'll see what we can do. We did submit our application for managed recharge project at Green Valley in January of this year, and not sure, ADWR is pretty understaffed, overworked. So not sure when we'll receive that permit. But then after that, of course, comes the decision of, do we release water from Green Valley into the river instead of into the basins? And that'll be its own kind of decision. And then if you recall, for Mount Lemmon, we have discharged via spray fields, and U.S. Forest Service did not want to renew our special use permit. We were tagged as waste disposal. So, we don't think of our effluent as waste, but the Washington, D.C. did. So we submitted an application to install a wildlife drinker, and that is currently with the Forest Service, and they're reviewing it. They're probably gonna have to do, NEPA or environmental impact statements and stuff, but it's with them. It's in the works. Now, talking about staffing or staffing and Power BI, I took the top graph here is the department's staffing and vacancies for this fiscal year ending in June. And I took specifically CRAO's data. And interesting, for those of you who have the printout, you can see that it's a slightly different graph, different colors. Well, since I made this presentation, Belinda took it upon herself to create mimic the bottom graph and added the sliders, where now we can get to, create a chart granular down to the unit level. So just kind of shows how quickly we can create new graphs and charts within Power BI, and just shows the agility of the program. But you can see that we have 60 staff at CRAO, so we're sitting in that 8 to 10% of staffing, and you can see here, every single month of the fiscal year, the laboratory has been advertising. They're sitting in probably around that 10% vacancy. There's 31 staff in the lab. And we did fill 25 vacancies in the last year out of 60 staff, so pretty high number. We have several aquifer protection permits that we're working on. The department does a tremendous amount of work. I think you all can recognize that. At Tres Rios, we have a ton of projects going on. At Corona, we have a couple of projects going on. I'm not going to go through the list just to save time, but the chart that I included here shows just the staggered approach of different things at different design, and when procurement's going to happen and when construction's going to happen, and the juggling that we have to do is that ADEQ only wants us to have one permit amendment open at a time. We cannot have two amendments open for the same permit. So when do you can't submit a permit application until you have 100% design documents stamped and sealed by the engineer. So when do you submit? When do you get your permit? You need your permit, of course, before you can start operating a new facility that you've constructed. So it's just an interesting juggle that we get to deal with. Another new item, aquifer water quality standards, were just published by ADEQ. So what changed? There's going to be 4 new standards, and that's going to be bromate, chlorite, haloacetic acids, and uranium. There's 2 adjusted limits. That's for total trihalomethanes and arsenic, and then 1 adjusted interpretation, and that will be for the microbiology contaminants. The rule goes into effect on August 4th. Baseline monitoring will have to begin by November 4th. And baseline monitoring includes the routine monthly analysis for 12 months. So 12 samples of all routine discharge locations. Quarterly analysis of all compliance well locations for 8 quarters. So 20 samples for, 7 aquifer protection permits. Several of the permits have more than 1 POC well. All of that's going to happen in this next couple years. Thankfully, in this time, the laboratory did become licensed for chlorite, bromate, and uranium. We were previously never licensed for those, but the lab now has those up and running. So we'll be able to do more of those analyses in-house. But a pretty big new set of standards coming for the aquifer protection program. I can't think of the last time that ADEQ added new parameters for this. Okay, now advanced water purification. The ADEQ, so first, really, this presentation just scratches the surface of advanced water purification and really more so wastewater's involvement in it. The full, really talking about it could be a multiple hour discussion. So we'll see where we can get. But ADEQ was mandated by the Arizona State Legislature in 2022 to create a direct potable reuse. That was the name at the time, or advanced water purification program. And they just released the notice of final rulemaking on March 4th, 2025 of this year. And it involved the modification of 4 sections of code. And what we'll be talking about today is in Chapter 9. So Arizona Administrative Code, Title 18, Chapter 9, Article 8 specifically. So what is advanced water purification? And I'll just make the comparison between indirect potable reuse and advanced water purification. And the difference here is that very bottom bubble. Indirect potable reuse, we use an environmental buffer as the exchange between wastewater treatment and drinking water treatment. And this is what we do all day, every day in our region. We recharge water in the river or in basins, and then the drinking water facilities pump aquifer water out. That's indirect potable recharge. Advanced water purification doesn't have that buffer. It sends it to an additional facility. So straight from wastewater treatment to an advanced water treatment facility, an AWTF, then to a drinking water treatment facility, a DWTF, then to the consumer. And that handoff is really kind of what this rule is formalizing. Talking about responsibilities between wastewater and Tucson water, I'll start with the definition, the AWRA, the Advanced Water Purification Responsible Agent. And in this system for Tucson Water will be the AWRA. They are the water provider, and so they are going to be running the program. The other definition within the rule is the AWRA partner. RWRD would be the AWRA partner. And I showed this little, made this little diagram here to show who's responsible in our system, again, for Tucson. who's responsible in what areas. And, we are responsible for the wastewater, the water reclamation facilities, and the final effluent. And then Tucson Water would be responsible for the drinking water treatment facility, the advanced water treatment facility, and the drinking water distribution system, and getting that water to the consumer. Now, interestingly, there are requirements in the rule that certain steps be done by the entity with wastewater authority. So if RWD would have to be involved in this, we can't just say, hey, you guys do it. The rule has two main treatment goals in how to treat the water before it's treated for consumption. There's pathogen control, and they focus on what they call log removal value, LRV, of Giardia, Cryptosporidium, and viruses. And then chemical control, which they identify into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And I'll go quickly to pathogen control first. There are two options that they identify. You can do option 1, which is without effluent characterization. And you can see that in that little table, the LRVs, the log removal values, are higher than in the other table to the right, which is if you do site-specific characterization of your pathogens. What is a log removal value? If y'all remember your log base 10 mathematics, 1 log is 1 decimal point. And so if you have 1 log removal, you remove 90% of a contaminant. If you have 2 log removal, you remove 99%. 3 log removal is 99.9%, and so on. So 13 log removal is 99.9999999. I'm not going to count, but yes, you can see that it's supposed to be pretty protective and remove a big significant portion of it. Characterization. So the decision: do you do characterization or do you not do characterization? Well, what is characterization? And on the right, it's 2 years of pathogen data. Daily for 1 month and monthly for 23 months. Samples are to be collected before and after disinfection at the WRF, so on plant site, on our plant site, excuse me. And thinking about this financially, that's 54 samples times 2 locations times 2 facilities. It's about 200 samples over 2 years. Just enteric virus costs $1,700 per sample. I don't know what Giardia or Cryptosporidium cost. We don't do those here. We subcontract it out enteric virus, but I just wanted to throw those numbers out. We're talking about some pretty big analytical costs here. And I don't even know how they're going to get daily for 1 month for something like enteric virus. It's hard enough for us to schedule it once a month when we need it. Okay, chemical control and what I've talked about so far has all been pretty manageable. Chemical control can get pretty crazy. Tier 1 is Safe Drinking Water Act primary drinking water standards. We know them, we're familiar with them. Tucson Water tests for them routinely. There's nothing new about them. But that's tier 1. Tier 2 is what they call AWP specific chemicals. And I'll jump into tier 2 a little bit more, but the way you manage those is enhanced source control, which is beefed up IWC. So now we're back to a wastewater task. You have to catalog your collection system and find out what are tier 2 chemicals. So tier 2 chemicals are going to be a location by location list. And then tier 3 chemicals are performance-based indicators. So these are designated critical control points within the treatment system. Maybe what's your TOC value between this GAC tank and this, RO? And if that TOC is out of spec, you need to do something, and that's a performance-based indicator as part of treatment. We'll jump briefly into enhanced source control, because again, this would be a wastewater task. This requires wastewater regulatory authority. And if any of you are curious, you can read it in Title 18 E 824 in Chapter 9. But it requires the monitoring and assessment of non-domestic dischargers. Okay, so now we're going out to those who are contributing to our collection system. It requires source investigations, an early warning system, which is no real identification of what that is. Do we have pH meters set throughout our collection system to give us alarms? Unclear. A pollution and reduction elimination plan, a septage hauler and control program. We have a septage receiving station at Tres Rios. This would require us to monitor and regulate and control what people are bringing in and dropping off at our septage receiving facility, and response plans. And early in this section, in the enhanced source control section, the rule requires the opera to create a list of what they call potentially impactful dischargers that meet certain types of criteria around, that have potential to disrupt AWP activities. And this is somewhat analogous to the National Pretreatment Program already does in significant industrial users, but it's different. So it's just fundamentally different. And so now you have these like kind of parallel programs, one of them clearly defined with the National Pretreatment Program, and one of them I would say poorly defined with the AWP rule. And it's unclear kind of where they combine. I promise I'm getting the end of the presentation. But this is a really big slide, I think. So now we're jumping from enhanced source control to tier 2 chemicals and how we define tier 2 chemicals. And I'm going to read these sections and put some emphasis on this. So earlier we had to go and define the non-domestic dischargers list. So the advanced water purification responsible agent applicant shall list all non-domestic dischargers in any collection system that is ultimately treated by the WRF. So all, we get to that fun word, all. We have, I believe, about 19,000 non-domestic dischargers in our collection system. We are currently at a non-domestic discharger right now. Home Depot is a non-domestic discharger. McDonald's is a non-domestic discharger. I mean, anybody except a home is a non-domestic discharger. Okay. Now, second part, the applicant shall generate a list of all chemicals that are used, stored, or discharged by all non-domestic dischargers in the list from subsection B above. I brought it with props. I took these out of our janitorial closet right now. 1, Gojo skin lotion. This would count as a chemical. I'm not even going to read these, but you can imagine that we use these cleaners. The non-domestic discharger down the road doesn't. So are we really creating a list of every single chemical in circulation, in creation? Not to mention something like Home Depot. How many chemicals does Home Depot? How many chemicals does our laboratory have? And then, I mean, I know, yes, it's wild. It's wild that they put this in the rule. We commented on it. They didn't change the rule. So now that we have the list of non-domestic dischargers, now that we have the list of chemicals used in non-domestic dischargers, tier 2 analysis, the applicant shall conduct the following analysis for each chemical identified in the chemical inventory list in subsection C above. The projected daily load for each non-domestic discharger, the projected daily load for all non-domestic dischargers. So you have each one, now you sum them for a total daily load. You get a projected daily concentration in the wastewater. For chemicals with an established health advisory, compare the projected daily concentration with the lowest health advisory from the following list.
Oh my God.
I don't know how you do this, but what in? I mean, thank you. Yeah, to what end? We already have a national pretreatment program. We already know that the efficacy and effectiveness of RO and GAC and these other treatment technologies. And Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be,
System overload.
it's gonna be, it's just. They made the rule to be non-prescriptive, and by that I mean, they wanted it to be demonstrative. They wanted everyone who went through the AWP process to prove their system worked. Instead of them saying, if you do this treatment train, which would be like RO plus GAC plus, ultrafiltration, this most serious level of treatment, you're good to go. There's nothing better than this. But even if you do that, you have to do all this. And, we go, wow, this is awful. I talked to people in Phoenix. Phoenix has 100,000 non-domestic dischargers, so, maybe it's not so bad.
This is a one-time thing.
No. No, you have to do it, when you apply, you have to do it when you receive your permit, and there has to be an ongoing enhanced source control plan.
So, given that this is kind of impossible, are there conversations along
Yeah.
in the state about?
So I'll talk some activity so far. This is my last slide. I'm sorry. So just some activity so far, and certainly can answer more questions too. So remember, the city of Tucson received $86.7 million from the Bureau of Reclamation to do this. They've hired right now HDR to be primary contractor through some of these initial efforts. HDR performed a gap analysis between the enhanced source control program and the rule and our ordinance to see what might need to change. And we've had some back and forth on that gap analysis. HDR has also visited Tres Rios and Agua Nueva a few times to determine maybe some sample locations that they can use for the initial source water characterization. It's ISWC. And we have a meeting tomorrow to discuss what they envision for the initial source water characterization. There's, importantly, to answer your question, Claire, there's a workshop that's been formed between Pima County, City of Tucson, Scottsdale, and Phoenix. Really, some of the 824, which is enhanced source control, and 826, which is the tier 2 chemicals. There's been 2 meetings so far with just this workshop. There's an additional meeting on July 15th, and then there are currently 3 meetings scheduled with ADEQ with Randy Mattis and some of his people. He's one of the deputy directors at Over Water. Yes, we did a similar prop sort of demonstration at our workshop of like how do you go through. I mean, this doesn't even have ingredients on it, right? You'd have to go to the SDS if you wanted. Yeah, for more ingredient information, visit individualproducts.com. So now for every chemical, you have to go to the website. Anyways, yeah, it's being workshopped by some of the people in the state to try to see what can happen. But ADEQ doubled down and they said no, the rule is rule. It is written. You have to do every single anonymous discharger, every single chemical. So
What do you do about the illegal ones like meth labs and moonshiners and all the good stuff on this? I
don't have those on my list. Not prepared for that question.
You say so.
Yeah.
Those are residential.
You're not accepting, and then the final item here is that the county administrator did approach the Tucson city manager with a proposal to form a committee that will look at revising the last 45 years of agreements all the way back to the 1979 IGA, because we know this is, this is a city project with county involvement. There's going to need to be agreements, and there's a lot of things that might need relooking, retooling, reworking. So lots going on, in 6 months, this presentation will probably change. But with that.
What's the timeline?
The city needs to have construction completed by 2031.
So quick.
Quick. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of dates and times and stuff in there related to they need to operate a pilot facility for 1 year before they can put it into production and I mean, again, there's tons within the rule that I didn't even talk about. But, yeah, any other questions?
How does the federal side, and what I'm talking about is, we have an Air Force base and all of that goes on. How does this interact with all of that?
Well, I mean, we currently have our pre-treatment program. We currently permit the Air Force Base. We manage their discharge already. I don't think under this rule, we would have to consider the Air Force Base any differently than any other non-domestic discharger. We'd have to go there and count. I
don't want to.
We walk up to Raytheon and say, can we see all your chemicals? I don't even want to scratch that.
Yeah.
We have several questions.
Oh,
So can everybody hear Max okay out there from that far? Anne Marie, you had a question.
You're muted, Anne Marie.
Sorry about that. Just some clarification, and I haven't followed this closely. But the advanced water treatment is required if you skip the environmental buffer. Correct? But if you're not skipping the environmental buffer, then it's not required. Is that correct? So this is
status quo. Yep.
Yeah, it would be status quo. So this is really putting in additional protections for the wastewater going directly to the water treatment facility.
Correct.
Correct. So so maybe, and again, I don't know the details of the regulations, but I mean, a lot of the community members have been concerned about this, rightly or wrongly, but this is providing that extra layer of protection since it's no longer going to have an environmental buffer before it goes into the drinking water treatment plant. So I think we need to keep that in mind, why these regulations were actually requested and why people were asking for them and why it's being done. It's providing that extra layer of protection. Has it been implemented? Are the rules perfect? I don't know the answer to that, but the original intent is protecting our drinking water supply.
Yeah.
So because we're removing that buffer, that environmental buffer. So I think hopefully things will get worked out on that. This is not, we're not changing the whole, if you're staying with the environmental buffer, my understanding is we're not changing that, okay, except the new standards that are coming in. But it's now if we're going from the treatment plant to the drinking water treatment plant. So we're removing that protection that we have through the environmental buffer. And just coincidentally, we had a project with the U of A where we did go to facilities, non-domestic, and we did get all their chemicals, and we did look at all the ingredients, and we looked at the layers, and we looked at their hazardous. And it turns out that as far as cleaning chemicals, most of them are very similar. So it wasn't near as onerous as we thought it would be because it was a pollution prevention program. 4 or 5 years with the university that we did with the public health agency. So yeah, on first reading, this sounds really onerous. And as we know, there are a lot of chemicals that they're just, some of them, there aren't even methods to detect them yet and things like that. So, but still, the intent is to protect our drinking water. So I think we just all need to keep that in mind. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, there's been a lot of discussion so far on trying, what does a more manageable rule look like? For example, I'll go to the Home Depot. The rule does say you must catalog any chemical that is stored, used, or discharged at the location, but for the most part, the Home Depot is a resale outlet, right? The people who, the chemicals at Home Depot aren't used there, they're being used not at Home Depot, so we shouldn't count them. We shouldn't count all their chemicals as being discharged at that location. So is there a way to refine the list? Or maybe, earlier in the rule, the rule requires us to make the potentially impactful dischargers list. Can we just use that list for the tier 2 chemicals? I mean, currently no, but is that a solution to maybe, make it a little bit more manageable. And yeah, that's one of the things being worked on at the workshop.
And then, was that all your question or comment, Anne Marie? Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to Asia, who's next on our list. Asia, you had a question or comment?
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, thanks, everybody. I just wanted to make an acknowledgement, or I guess it's a comment, that of course, I know Claire, I think our chair knows, I think probably most of you know that I work for Tucson Water, and I just wanted to bring up that I think any decisions or like deliberation, I'm assuming deliberations I would participate in, but I wouldn't be making any recommendations on this committee. And I just wanted to bring it up. And Jackson, if you wanted to look into that or talk to your support staff about how any other considerations for that. I just wanted to bring that up, but you can continue, please continue with the discussion. I do think I'm sure we will see a lot more of what's going on and the resolutions to these issues that Max is bringing up.
Thank you. And then Matt Matheson.
Thanks, Claire, and thank you, Max, for the great update. This back on your comment about the Mount Lemon facility. I didn't catch, what's the workaround up there? What are we doing currently to manage the effluent?
We're still using the spray field. The Forest Service, even though the permit, the special use permit that we previously had did expire, they did not allow us to renew it as is. So we're currently using the spray field, and we will continue to use the spray field. The difference is that we've proposed to install a drinking trough that wildlife can use, so deers and birds and wildcats, et cetera, that in the eyes of the Forest Service kind of reclassifies the use from, they have a list of uses, and what they had previously assigned us was waste disposal. And so now it's going to be reclassified as, I forget the exact term, but it, like beneficial use, like grazing and watering for wildlife and plants.
Oh, good.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Max this time? CG? Oh, yes, sorry.
Just, I had a clarification about the, as Anne Marie brought up the buffer, the, buffers of the officer and everything.
Could you speak just a little louder so the mic
Oh,
can hear
sorry.
you?
Yeah, my question is just about, I guess, the timeline where under our current system where we're, having that environmental buffer, what's the, I'm sure it varies. I'm sure it's not the same everywhere, but on average, is there a sort of average of how much time it takes from when we recharge the aquifer to when that is back and, being drawn up into people's homes?
There's not really anything in like rule that requires a certain amount of time. Typically, you're recharging at the surface and your wells are hundreds of feet down. Can't really, do you know like an average number?
There isn't one.
Yeah.
It obviously depends on geology and other factors, whether you're passing it through a wetland or if it's just going through a sand. But it brings up something very important, about how undoable the way the rule is written right now and how simple it is to really provide the water where they want to if they just put wells in a conventional water treatment facility that puts it out into the community. But I think right now we are kind of hung up on the novelty of advanced water purification and going through so many hoops when there is a more direct path to, putting this water into the community as potable.
There's a lot of those things about, there isn't new water, all water is recycled, and so theoretically, we're all drinking dinosaur pee. So if that gives you an indication of how old some of it is, or how long it takes, there you go.
That's what I guess this came up for me during the Project New conversation where there were these sort of promises of being water positive, which are often taken very seriously, but I just wanted to really understand what the claim was. And if, all water is, but why, and I mean, it evaporates rains, whatever, but, I guess, yeah, there's no way of even saying the average of, okay, in terms of the cycle, we put it in the aquifer and then we pump it from the well, there's no.
No, because like you can go out to the 49ers Country Club and it's 15 feet to the groundwater.
Right.
Or you can buy here where you got 415 feet somewhere, you know, so you have all the different geography and, you know, it's makeup of soils and
Yeah.
permeability and stuff. So it could be very short to days to potentially years to get to the water table. So that's the challenge.
That's at least something.
But you know, recharging water on the surface and pumping out from wells is better than not recharging on the surface and still pumping out from wells. It's better, but yeah, there's no real clear finding.
And I'll just add that, the environmental buffer thing, as I've heard it described, is kind of a figment of the imagination, honestly, of the public. Because if you think about the Colorado River or any of our larger rivers, Town A discharges their wastewater, which is treated to regulation levels in a river that does or does not have background water. Town B, we're not even talking wells, has an intake that is a mile down the river or less, and there it goes. And all it's done is gone from A to B in whatever that amount of time is, but there's been no treatment process. It's not gone through a wetland. And they know the water quality and they monitor it. But this is kind of more about, there's not the time in that purifying thing that the public thinks the environment purifies in some way, but it doesn't really always.
Say PFAS, for
Or even
example.
often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want us to be aware, that we cannot actually take comments from the public during these items, I don't believe, correct?
Correct, you gotta wait to
So
call to
we
the
need
audience.
to wait to call to the audience. So I'm sorry, Jim, but we're gonna have to ask you to speak at call to the audience. Asia, sorry about that. Asia, did you have another question?
I did, actually. I had a question on a different part of the presentation. I was curious, Max, you mentioned the permitting of the Green Valley plant, right? And the recharge, the managed recharge. And I think at one time that you had discussed that you were looking at potentially tying it to a park or using that part of the, rule and legislation to look at getting, instead of 50% credit, but the 95. Did that go anywhere? Are you still considering that?
It was submitted, under that item, but, and I believe it would be 100%. But I don't think we'll know that until we receive the permit back. That might be at the end of this year or later.
Okay, any other
Okay, thanks.
comments? Thank you. And Jim, we will get back to you at call to the audience. All right, so we're moving on then. Thank you so much, Max. That was excellent. We are moving on to FY 24-25 period 11 expense and revenue report. And he's not here today. Oh, he's not here. Who is good?
Michelle, are you the one doing the summary today?
Hey, Jeanette, no, I apologize. I am not. Let me try to get a hold of somebody real quick. Hold on.
We can move on to
Yeah.
the separation.
Yeah, let's move on and then we'll come back. We'll start with the different committee reports and financial subcommittee report, Matt.
Committee has not met since our last meeting, so we don't have anything to report. No future meetings planned at this point, and just wanted to say thanks to Kirsten for carrying the chair forward into next year.
Thank you, Matt, for all your many years as the chair on the committee. And you'll still be there giving us great contributions from your insight of many years in the financial portion of these things in your career. So thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to the CFP subcommittee report. Asia?
Yes, thanks. Similarly, we have not had any meetings, so no updates, but we do have a meeting scheduled for July 14th. So looking forward to seeing everybody at that meeting to discuss the longer term planning under the CIP.
Great. And the Citizen Water Advisory Committee meeting report, Alan?
Yeah, so CWAC met last on June 4th. One of the main topics, presentations was, basically the, recommendation for rate increases, the differential rates, also, a couple fee adjustments, so, that we're moving to mayor and council, and I think they deliberated on it last week, but I didn't really hear the outcome, but basically, they moved forward the, differential rates at, plus 19% for unincorporated, Pima County. That was based on their, 40-60, debt to equity ratio, which was kind of right in the middle of the different options they had. This was kind of the middle one. And then along with that, they're going to implement the rate increase that they had anticipated moving forward in July. So they combine that with the differential rates. And then they're also looking to adjust the conservation fee, basically at 5 cents per CCF on the conservation fee. And same with the green infrastructure fee, but that would be a additional 2 cents per CCF infrastructure fee. All of those together are going to be packaged and implemented on August 4th, which I think was specifically to coincide with when Pima County's wastewater rates go into effect as well. So basically the customers will just see one change to their bill overall. So that's the idea. Another thing they discussed, which was also kind of rate based, but they're looking to, or staff is making a recommendation to combine commercial and industrial rate into one rate. And I don't really remember all the nuances, but basically I think they only have like one industrial rate customer now. Everything else is commercial, and that is only a remnant of an agreement with TUSD that doesn't really make sense anymore. So anyway, the idea is to combine those into one rate, so they'll have lesser categories of rates. And that will be effective in fiscal year 27, about a year from now. Also, Val Little, the chair of CWAC, retired. I think she turned out. So we're going to be going through some reshuffling of leadership on CWAC. Initially, so Val was the chair, Rory Juman is vice chair. Rory will move into the chair. And then beyond that, I think we have to kind of figure out, you know, what everything's gonna be, vice chair, committee chairs, all of that. I think that'll be worked out in September. And I'll just kind of give you a little bit of notice, but my role may be changing too. So I may come off of this committee and somebody else may be coming off, but we'll know more in September. And until then, I'm still on that RWRAC. Yeah. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you. That's great. I read recently that, that rate hikes are happening all over the country. And have you had some conversations in CWAC about that?
It's not a lot, it's, we just really kind of focus on
Yeah,
what's here, but I've heard, you know, I'm aware of the same thing.
yeah.
that's kind of been going on, across the country, really,
Yeah.
just because of, increased regulations and the costs associated with that. Also, usage everywhere has gone down, so you don't have economies of scale to spread it out as much as you used to. And with inflation, pushing, costs up, everybody's looking at this.
Yeah.
In the water sector, water and wastewater rates in the past half a dozen years and still are increasing more than inflation, the consumer
Yeah.
price index. So those costs are going up more than just the inflationary rate all over the country.
Yeah, that's what my understanding was as well from a couple of articles.
Yeah, and another driver here is CAP, the rates, and this probably affects people in the West as well, but CAP specifically, because their fixed costs are the same and they're delivering probably 30% less water than what they had been. So you still have to cover those costs, so those fixed costs. And so
their rates go up.
Rates are going up. That's a big driver for Tucson Water.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Okay, Michelle. Good. Would you like to move ahead with the the period 11 expense and revenue summary?
Yes, sorry, I apologize. Isai and Roy were not available. Jeanette, are you able to bring that up on the screen?
Ma'am, just give me 2 seconds.
Okay, if not, I think I've got it.
Here we go. Oh,
Yeah, okay.
oh, there it is. Okay.
Sorry, are you sharing it or did you want me to?
It was sharing. It seems like it was popping up and then it went away again. Hold on, let me try
Well,
it
I
again.
had shared it, but then I thought you were. This is what happens, people, when you got the second string doing it. So
Okay.
I just wanted to give you a brief update. I believe it was communicated that they didn't update the forecast for period 11 because obviously we're already at the end of June. The department's decision was not to update the forecast for period 11. But what Isai's team did is they updated the actuals. So the actual revenue column has been updated since this was last presented to you. So right now we're looking at actual revenues of 91 million. The period 10 forecast was 103,661 and the revised budget is 104. So right now we're forecast to come in a little bit under budget. On the expense side, we have actuals of 156,731 and the forecast is 181.6 and that's on a revised budget of 183.4. And then the breakdown at the bottom for the total revenues, and I'm sorry, I think I called the O&M revenue or the O&M expense revenues. The total revenues is the actuals are the 167.9. The forecast is 199,052, and that's on a revised budget of 199,059. The ratios haven't changed because the forecast didn't change, and the ratio is built off of the forecast. So I apologize for making a mess of this presentation. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them or pass them along to Isai's team.
Didn't seem like a mess to me.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Matt, you had a question?
Yeah, it's a pretty critical time for the department's handling of its financial matters as it nears the end of the fiscal year and tries to come in as close as possible to the budgeted numbers without going over.
Right.
And without the forecasting work, I guess want to check with Jackson and make sure that the department's getting all it needs to make the decisions that it needs to in the next month, less than a month.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. That transition to Workday definitely has, caused a few, differences for us. But, we're still using the Power BI tool for a lot of our cost information, and that's working reasonably well. I'll defer, I never like to put anyone on the spot, Tracy, but I'll put Tracy on the spot. She's front and center in all of our, activities trying to wrap up the end of the year. And she's identified a number of things, and we've already shared with finance that after we close out the year, we close out the books, we'd like to do a post-mortem and talk about, things that didn't work well, things that were good, some things that maybe we want to prepare for next year to do better. So Tracy, you want to add anything into that?
The only thing that I'm gonna add, is I have confidence in the system, but it's just with any transition to a new software, there's always kinks that have to be worked out. But finance is working with us, and any blips, or concerns that we run into, I reach out to finance. And they're very quick to, answer my questions and guide me in the right direction. I don't have any concerns like how we're gonna end this fiscal year. The biggest thing is I know we're not going to be over budget, which is huge. And if I had a choice to be over budget or under budget, I'd choose under budget any day of the week. But I just want everybody to know, like, I have no concerns. Again, it's just a new software and everybody's just getting used to it. And again, whether it was like a new version of Microsoft or something, there'd always be glitches. So I just want the committee to know that, like, I don't have any concerns as far as how we're moving into fiscal year end.
Yeah, and for, a couple of months ago, there was more unknowns, Matt. We were worried that something's gonna pop up at the last minute or at the end of the year and throw us into a concerning area like over budget or close. But we've spent the last 2 months diving into those things and getting more assurance that there are less likely to be any of those surprises. So I think, as Tracy said, we're gonna come in under budget. We're still going in a little bit gray, but all in all, I think we're in pretty good shape. So I'm just gonna say, yeah, we're comfortable enough with where we are at this point. And be honest, we probably could have spent more money. There's always things we need to spend money on. But we got a little bit nervous a couple of months ago, so we slowed down. That train, once it slows down, it takes a little bit to get it ramped up again. But I think we're in good shape, and the department's in a good situation right now.
Thank you.
Excellent. No other comments? All right, I'll move on to, thank you very much, Michelle. We'll move on to the future agenda items. Anybody have any future agenda items other than the ones that are on our schedule?
Just an update on the cap allocation update that you guys requested. I have spoken to Mark Taylor, our old RAC committee member, and he will be able to provide us with the presentation in November.
Oh, great.
So we just drag him back in, and nobody's allowed to leave.
And you and I talked about this earlier. I don't think the Project Blue has much implications for us, but if that comes up.
Project Blue?
We're working with the Project Blue committee and all the discharge that goes along with that. Max's tackling that, we got some under control. It's going to be too complicated. It seems like it's something that, other than capacity, that we're working with to be fine tuned. The permit will be on Max's side and it's working through it.
Great. I just think if as this develops, if there's a need for us to know something so that we can, represent this committee and provide comment, please just add that to the schedule.
I didn't want to include it in my update or it would have taken 6 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't want to ask for it to be on the agenda in particular, but I just think it needs to be on front of mind to be added if we need to.
You can always let Jackson and I know, we can include it in Jackson's update.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be great. All right, anything else? We are going to go back to a call to the audience or to our next item. And Jim, did you have a comment that you wanted to offer? Sorry, I had to put you off.
Yeah, two things really. The the discussion about the environmental buffer, in the APP, the point of compliance essentially defines this. So that's where it would be negotiated where the end of the environmental buffer applied and where there was protection for all current and future uses of the aquifer. So that's, that's where that would be set up. And then with I was wondering in this discussion, they were talking about a workshop of discussing with ADEQ how to apply these rules. I think in that workshop, they should try to get ADEQ to rely on BADCAT for meeting some of these concerns. I don't, instead of, BADCAT is something that relies on process controls rather than individual chemical by chemical removal attempts. And so if you could switch ADEQ onto, relying on BADCAT, that would be ideal.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so one of the ideas that I proposed to the group was kind of exactly that of saying, can we have ADEQ agree to redefining when this whole tier 2 investigation is necessary? So again, if you do the most rigorous type of treatment, RO, UF, GAC, which is I think what the city is planning on doing, and Scottsdale and Phoenix. So if you're going to use BADCAT, maybe you don't have to do this whole investigation. Conversely, if we were going to put advanced water purification on Mount Lemon, we might not do RO and all this stuff, but also this tier 2 investigation would be significantly easier. There's like 3 non-domestic dischargers up there. So now you have this trade-off of like, oh, now it makes sense to do the investigation over the financial investment of BADCAT. So yeah, we're hopefully going to present that to them, but as in the rule right now, that doesn't exist.
Thank you, very helpful. All right, I'm gonna call for adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I have one.
Oh, a call to audience? Yes, sorry.
So, with indirect, you don't have to recharge it, right? You can also put it into the reservoir and it's considered indirect and it's a buffer. Which, I believe, that's what they do in San Diego. They just treat it and then they send it to the reservoir and that's considered indirect.
Is there natural water that flows into the reservoir as well to dilute it? So I think that would be back to like the river analogy of the environmental buffer. The Mississippi, the ones at the top might get no wastewater in it, but the ones at the bottom, certainly it's been recycled many times. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a California thing and not an Arizona.
Yeah, I was just wondering if that applied here. Not that we have a large reservoir right near water reclamation facilities, but it's interesting, isn't it?
Right, thank you. Any other public comment? Yes.
Wanted to share about a survey we have open for the Roger Road facility, and with your permission, I can share it with Jeanette and we can forward to the group so that you can participate and hopefully help spread the word to get more public comment about future reviews of the property.
Great.
Yes, send it to me and I'll forward it.
We all want to do that. All right. Any other public comment?
This is the most we've ever had.
I know, it's very exciting. All right.
That's where we had our.
We have like, we engaged.
There we
All
go.
right, so, all right. So now on to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second. As Anne Marie.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much. Great meeting.
Done by 9:30.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Exactly.